Hello, and welcome to our Employer 101 Roles and Responsibilities. This is our virtual workshop. This is the same workshop that we host. We hosted it in the spring of this year, and we wanted to be able to offer it virtually for the employers that were unable to make it. We do plan on to continue to take this out on the road once a year. We're still trying to find the best sweet spot to accommodate most people. We were having it in the summer. Then it was suggested to us to try it at a different time. So we tried it in the spring of this year. So we're going to continue to try out different times of the year for the Employer 101s. But I just want to thank you for coming today to our virtual 101. We have a lot of information to cover. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Before I start, we do have Michelle Richards in the chat today. So if you ever have any questions over any material that I'm covering, please feel free to ask it in the chat. Michelle will answer your question there. If it needs to be addressed to the group, Michelle will just cut in like we normally do in a regular in-person training, and we'll address the question to the group. Again, if you've been to any of our virtual trainings or in-person trainings, Michelle and I are pretty laid back. So we try to carry the same sense of comfort and laid back vibes on our virtual trainings as we do for our in-person. So please feel free to ask the questions, because if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it. So I'd like to address it to the group. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started since we have a lot of information to cover in 58 minutes. So welcome to our Employer 101 to cover roles and responsibilities. Today, we're just going to go over a general overview for employer responsibilities. We're going to go into a deep dive on membership, compensation, and then we're going to touch on contribution reporting and payment. So for employer overview, we're going to go through some resources and responsibilities. So just a basic 101 of employer roles and responsibilities include providing member enrollments for all SERS members, including your reemployed retirees. When they have retired, whether from SERS or STRS, and they come back to work for the district, we still need a new member enrollment with their new first date of service, not their first date of service from 25 years ago, but their new current first date of service. We need reporting contribution detail for all of your member or employees, remitting corresponding payments, submitting any corrections to ensure member account accuracy. So this encompasses all adjustments. So if you need to add a payment, add days and hours, or if you need to remove contributions or days and hours, that would be done through an adjustment. We need you to request membership or compensation determinations in cases of uncertainty. We will go into that in detail here in a minute, but it's always important if there's any new types of payments or a new position to the district or any questions regarding membership or compensation, always reach out to Employer Services. That's what we're here for, is to help guide you through those type of decisions, because if you make the decision yourself, it could be very expensive in the long run. So it's always best to reach out to Employer Services when it comes to determinations. Then we need employers to complete wage certifications. And it may seem small to you, but it's very important that you make sure you update us on all staff changes. So especially when we are emailing school districts about employer statement balances, and we realize that the entire employer statement balance season has come to an end. We haven't received payment yet, and then we hear from the district that we have been emailing the wrong individuals for follow-up on payment. It's very crucial to make sure that all staff changes are updated in ESERS. So for employer resources, I'm going to stop my share really quick from the PowerPoint, and I'm going to share our employer webpage, which is here. So when you go to ohsers.org, it's really important that this is where you go to log into ESERS. So when you're logging into ESERS, we don't want you using bookmarks. The reason being is that we are constantly updating our system, and there are times where we update ESERS, and if you're going through a bookmark that you have saved, and we have updated ESERS, that bookmark is no longer valid and that link becomes broken. So to make sure that you don't have any login issues, it's really important that you go to ohsers.org and you click on the yellow ESERS button so that you can log into our system. For employers, for additional resources, we have this employer's whiteboard dropdown that addresses any and all topics, especially topics that we're covering today and next week in regards to all of the information that an employer would need to know. But the most important tab, in our opinion, is this forms and publications. And then following that is the training opportunities. But for forms and publications, if you click on forms and publications, it takes you to this screen where you can download any type of material, guide, handout, fact sheet, any bulletins, any how-tos, anything that we have put out there as a resource for our employers. It's something that you can download to your computer or you can print off. So for our employer guides, it gives us all of the guides that we have published for our employers. If you received the ESERS guide, well, I know that you received the ESERS guide in the employer reminder email for this training, but if you want to view it by section instead of the entire thing, you just click view section, and this will just give you the 3 or 4 page section of the topic that you're looking for. So the forms and publications page is really important. If you feel like you've missed out on bulletins, any special notices or hotlines from us, we keep a history of 5 years. Yes, of 5 years underneath each drop down, so you can download bulletins from previous years. And our handouts. This is where you would find the joint membership common positions for SIRS and STIRS, the employer checklist for onboarding new employees, and our new compensation chart for what's new and what's not changing. But we also have our fact sheets, which are quick snippets of the employer handbook. So if you need any quick hits on ARP, disability, service credit purchase, surcharge, any of these topics you can download. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So employer responsibilities for membership, we always want you to contact us with any membership questions. It is the employer's responsibility to enroll all new employees in ESERS, including your reemployed retirees. You'll upload the SSA 1945 form through ESERS, or you can still fax it to us. And we ask that you forward all ARP information for colleges and universities only. So for reporting and payment, request compensation determinations for any additional payments or bonuses or stipends or grievance settlement agreements. So we'll always need certain material in regards to the type of payment that you're making, which we'll get into in a little bit. We want you to submit contribution reports through ESERS, address any errors or warnings on the contribution report. We don't consider the contribution report received and posted until all errors and warnings have been addressed. Submit the contribution file for posting, and then pay your liabilities in the payment remittance application once your file has posted. For annual processes, we kick off our annual processes towards the end of March with the salary estimate window for foundation participating districts only. We'll want you to review foundation deduction notices through ESERS for foundation participating districts. Everyone will have to review their employer statement balance. So whether if you owe SIRS money or we owe you a refund, it's important to download that document and to review it and view and pay your surcharge invoice. We will be going through employer statements and surcharge later. Additional responsibilities is to explain SIRS retirement and alternative retirement plans to your new employees. This helps that when they receive their first paycheck and they see that 10% is being taken out and sent to SIRS, it's important that you address that prior to their first payment so that they know that the 10% is being sent to the pension system for their future retirement. Retain any exemption forms and complete certified wages and ESERs once the final payroll information has been obtained. And finally, continuous training. We cannot stress this enough. We always ask for our employers to at least sign up for 1 or 2 trainings a year. You don't always have to sign up for the one-on-ones, but you can sign up for quick little sound bites or an employer education training. Or you can ask for an employer 101 where we would come out to you and we would work with you on your pain points for your contribution reporting. But we ask that you do continue to have continuous training on CSRS roles and responsibilities. So before I move forward, Michelle, should I address any questions?
No.
No? Okay. So now we're going to go into membership. So who is a CSRS member? A CSRS member is anyone who works in a public school in a non-teaching position. So employees who are not required to have a certificate or license covered under 3319.22 through 3319.31 of the Ohio Revised Code and issued by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce are CSRS members. This also includes your contract company and their employees. A CSRS member is any person listed in paragraphs B1, B2, or B3 of section 3309.01, section B of the Ohio Revised Code. They describe 3 separate types of definitions of employee that are CSRS covered members. Paragraph B1 is any person employed by a public employer in a non-teaching position that does not require a license under Ohio law. B2 defines an individual who performs a service that is common to the normal daily operation of a school, even though the person is employed and paid by one who is contracted with an employer to perform the service. And paragraph B3 is employed in a non-faculty position in a school, college, or other institution, wholly controlled and managed, and wholly or partly supported by the state or political subdivision. So you're probably thinking, what is common to the normal daily operation of an educational unit? So any service required to be provided on a regular continuous basis by the educational unit by law, statute, or rule. So for example of this, a school district is required to provide meals, transportation, and nursing services. So this is what we would consider common to the normal daily operation. Also, we consider any service necessary on a regular continuous basis to the efficient operation of an educational unit. So for this example, we always use information technology services, grounds maintenance, and cleaning services. These services are needed to provide an efficient operation of the educational unit. So that is common to the normal daily operation. And then also through custom and usage has become a service commonly provided or procured by an educational unit on a regular continuous basis. So for this example, we always use security services. What I would like for school districts to keep in mind when it comes to this example through custom and usage has become a service commonly provided or procured by an educational unit on a regular continuous basis. So let's say 5 years ago, you received a membership determination from us on a service that we determined to be provided by an independent contractor. So this service was only used once or twice a year. We did a determination for this service. We deemed it to not be common to the normal daily operation. But as payroll has shifted over the years, needs for the district have shifted over the years, you as a payroll individual notice that this service is more common than it was 5 years ago, and that you are paying this provider once or twice a month, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, weekly, what have you, but you have noticed that although we have deemed it to not be common to the normal daily operation, now you have seen that the district is using the service more often, more frequently. We ask that you ask for another membership determination from us because we don't know what we don't know, but through years, custom and usage has changed with this service. So we ask that you ask for another membership determination. We will review the documentation, compare it to what we had in previous years. We will compare the determination that we gave you initially. We will give you a new determination based off of the information that you have provided us. It is very possible that we would still deem it not common to the normal daily operation, or we would say, yes, now that it's more common through custom and usage, this is now what we consider to be common to the normal daily operation. This individual will now report to SERS as a SERS covered member. Okay, so like I said, we don't know what we don't know, so it's up to the district to keep us up to date on changes to certain membership or compensation. So what we consider not common to the normal daily operation of an educational unit: service to vending machines, service to equipment under equipment warranty or purchase lease service agreement, service and or repair to equipment and or facilities of the employer on an emergency basis, providing trash pickup and disposal, providing student transportation in vehicles that are not identified by law or marked as school buses, and advising and or consulting on a temporary basis. A little bit of information on this last bullet: advising and or consulting. A lot of times, let's say when your treasurer retires, they'll come back and do a little bit of consulting for the school district on possibly a 5-year forecast. And just because you're saying that this person is consulting, you would still need to ask for a membership determination, because while you're thinking that it's just a consulting type position, it may fall under common to the normal daily operation, and we wouldn't consider it to be a consulting type position, and we would require SERS membership. So while it says advising or consulting on a temporary basis, we still need to see a membership determination on that. But any person falling within these categories and we deem them not to be SERS covered members, we wouldn't require membership for them. So while we talk about membership, who's covered, who's not covered, it's always important to keep in mind that your contractors, if they are employed to perform a service that is common to the normal daily operation of an educational unit, even though they are being hired by a third-party contractor, they have to be enrolled in SERS. They are what we consider SERS covered members. While they're not hired directly from the district is employing a third-party contractor to fill these positions. These positions are what we consider to be SERS covered members. There is no exemption from this requirement. Even if the contract company sends in someone different every day, we need a new enrollment for each individual that comes into the school and fills this position. And if they work part-time, we still need to have an enrollment for that individual. There is no differentiation between part-time and full-time. A day is a day. So any third-party contractor filling a SERS covered position must be enrolled in SERS. And like I said, if the overall facts of the situation indicate an employee and employer relationship between you and the worker, SERS membership is required, enrollments are required. So exemption from membership. Employees who may choose to exempt include students who are not members at the time of employment and are employed by the school, college, or university in which the student is enrolled and regularly attending classes, emergency employees serving on a temporary basis, and individuals who are employed in a program established under any federal job training program. So any type of employee that falls within these 3 categories have the option to exempt from membership. So for this first bullet, students who are not members at the time of employment and are employed by the school, college, or university, if they, at the time of employment, decide to exempt from SERS membership, so let's say you hired a high school senior this year to help in the office, and when you hired them, they decided to exempt from membership. The moment that they graduate and they continue employment with the school district, that is when they need to become a SERS covered member because they are no longer a student enrolled. Once they have graduated and they continue employment, the exemption ends and they become SERS members. So the school district would need to send in a membership, a SERS enrollment for that individual. My goodness, there we go. All right. So exemptions, if they decide to exempt from SERS membership, they have to complete a request for exemption from membership form. And that is in that forms and publications page. I can show you really quick. Because I don't think it's in the PowerPoint. It is not. Okay. So underneath forms and publications, you would go to employer forms. And in this dropdown, you would choose the membership exemption form. This form needs to be held on to by the school district indefinitely. So there is no statute of limitations when it comes to this form. If this form is completed, the school district will need to retain that form for the end of time. So basically, this request for exemption from membership form will need to be completed by the student, emergency employee, or the individual that's employed in a program established under the Federal Workforce Investment Act. This form would be completed, the school district would retain it and kept for their records. We, as SERS, if you send it to us, we don't technically have anywhere to store it because these individuals are choosing not to be SERS covered members. So we don't have an account for them to store the image for them. So it's important for the school district to retain this form. So let's say fast forward 30 years from now, your student is retiring finally. They stayed in a SERS covered position throughout their entire employment, and they are sitting in front of their retirement counselor and they're short a few years. People look for time. They start thinking about those few days that they worked in the school office. They possibly helped the librarian, anyone sitting in front of that retirement counselor and they're short, they look for their time. So let's say that student is short that few years. They come back to us and say, well, I worked in the office my junior and senior year of high school. Was that reported? And we find that it wasn't reported. We come to the school district and request information from them. This is when the school district would show us this form saying this individual exempted from membership for this time when they worked in the student office. And then the liability is taken away from the school district, and it's up to that individual, the member at that time, to either buy that time or to work an additional 2 years to make up the years that they didn't send in SERS membership. So it can get pretty costly for someone to buy that time back, especially student time, or if the school district doesn't retain this form and they have no proof that that individual exempted from membership. So sometimes this form is really good for school districts to hold on to just so that you are covered. So once they decided to exempt from SERS covered membership, the exemption is irrevocable. So let's say you hire a junior in high school, they come back, their junior year, they decide to exempt from SERS membership, but after talking to their parents are like, why did you do that? You might end up still working from the schools later on. You need to become a SERS covered member. Once an exemption is submitted, it's irrevocable. So if they exempt from membership, it's irrevocable until they graduate, and then their membership status will change. So optional membership, school board or governing board members have the option to contribute to SERS. Membership in SERS or Social Security must be chosen within the first 30 days of taking office. If the board member chooses SERS covered membership, then they will sign a new school board or governing board member election for membership to SERS form. This will need to be completed and submitted to SERS. So this form looks like this, which an example of these forms are also in your Employer 101 workbook that we submitted to you in your reminder email. But a new school or governing board member election for membership to SERS form looks like this. If they choose SERS membership, they will complete this form and you will send it to us and we will retain this form underneath the employee's name. So this is what the form looks like, and you can fax it to us, but unfortunately you cannot upload it to eSERS. Once the membership is chosen, it's irrevocable. So if they choose SERS membership, they have to stay a SERS member. If they decide to change their mind, there has to be a break in their terms. So for a board member, let's say their term is 2 years, they choose SERS membership, their term ends, they sit out for a while, they run for a board member seat again, they get in. At that point in time, they can choose either membership for SERS or their contributions would go to Social Security. So if they're not contributing to SERS, their contributions would go somewhere else. Governing authorities of community schools cannot belong to SERS. Exclusion from membership. So those excluded from membership include individuals who participate in an alternative retirement plan established by a college or university, University of Akron police officers who are covered by the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, otherwise known as OPERS. Individuals who have a license and are employed in an educational position through programs under federal law and financed by federal funds for which no license may be required. And new employees hired at the University of Akron after September 28th of 2016, they will be covered by the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System. And then lastly, community school operators. So as a general rule, individuals employed after July 1st, 2016 by a community school operator who were withholding and paying Social Security taxes for employees on or before February 1st, 2016 are excluded from membership. Michelle, before I go any further, are there any questions that I should address?
No.
No? Okay. Okay. So alternative retirement plans. An ARP is only an option for newly hired full-time employees of colleges and universities. So employers who are responsible for notifying SERS of an employee who is eligible for an ARP has to send a notice within 10 days of the employee's first day of employment by submitting a notice of employment or reclassification of employee eligible for alternative retirement plan form. So once we receive that form, the eligible employees have 120 days from their first day of full-time employment to enroll in an ARP. An employee who chooses the ARP must sign the retirement plan election form and return it to the employer, who is required to submit it to SERS within 10 days of receipt. Once the ARP form is submitted, it is irrevocable. So once the choice has been made, no changes can be made after that. So membership determinations. If there is ever a question in regards to a current or new position within your school district and you're not exactly sure if they should be SERS or STIRS or if they're an independent contractor, a determination request should include you can email employer services. We don't do determinations over the phone. So a determination request should include a completed membership determination form, and I'll show you that form really quick because this this form can get a little tricky because there are two sections to it that don't have to be complete. Only one section. Uh, Here it is. So this is the membership determination form. It quickly goes over SERS covered membership, but there are two sections. The first section will be completed if you're going into contract with an independent contractor. So if this is just an individual service provider, you would simply fill out section 1. And then section 2, if you scroll down, will be completed when you are working with a third party contractor. So you'll either fill out section 1 or section 2, but you won't fill out both sections. Basically, these questions are trying to determine if there's an employee and employer relationship between the school district and the independent contractor or third party contractor. So if you are going into contract with one of two of those, you would complete a membership determination form. We will need a copy of the job description and or contract. So if you have a job description and a contract, please send both. Upon review, employer services will make a determination. If there are any questions in regards to the initial staff determination provided to the school district and you aren't in agreement with the determination made, you can always provide additional information. We will loop our legal department in if we hadn't already, and a final determination from there will be provided. If from that point the school district still raises some questions in regards to the determination, an appeal can be made to the board. Once the board makes the determination, that determination is final. So payment of unreported time. So this is after a determination has been made. If it is determined that the employee is a SERS covered member and services have already been provided for the current fiscal year, the contributions will be entered into eSERS by file upload or manual entry, and a due date will be provided by us. Someone in employer services will be able to walk you through that. For a previous fiscal year, if it's determined that the employee is a SERS covered member and services have already been provided, you have 30 days to certify all earnings paid to the employee on the certification of salary for non-contributing service form. So this form would collect all of the information that wasn't reported to SERS for a previous fiscal year. We would run the cost. From there, that would be uploaded into eSERS in the payment remittance application. Once we have received payment for the unreported time, that's when the service credit and contributions would show in the member's account. If it's for a prior fiscal year, okay, so after we receive the certification of salary for non-contributing service, a charge will be made to the employee or to the employer for both the employee and employer contributions plus interest. Once this is calculated, the school district has until June 15th to provide payment. So we won't get into this today, but this is the evolution of membership. This is important, especially if you have someone coming in to your office saying, I was a coach during swim season of 1991. So let's put that around February of 1991. But I don't have any contributions that were sent during that time. It's really important. There is a lot of changes that happened in 1991 when it came to our membership. So sometimes it's nice to have this nice evolution of membership form because sometimes when there's unreported time based on the time in our evolution, that there may have been what is now required SERS membership now was optional back then. So it's just really important, nice to keep this handy just in case if an employee were to come to you and ask for during a certain time period, it's possible that it wasn't required to be SERS covered membership. So for enrollment, new employees and reemployed retirees can only be enrolled electronically through eSERS. You'd either use the upload enrollment files or manual enrollment entry application. You will not be able to submit contribution reporting for an individual until we've received enrollment. The Social Security or the 1945 can also be uploaded into eSERS, or you can still fax that to us. A retiree of SERS or another Ohio retirement system may be employed by a school in a position in which SERS contributions are required without limitation of the number of days or earnings. So when you are hiring a retiree, they've already gathered all of the retirement eligibility that they need, and they are considered a reemployed retiree. So when they come back to the school, while it's required for the school district to provide days and hours for this individual, we're not accruing it for retirement eligibility. All reemployed retirees are required to contribute to SERS if they are in a SERS covered position. They should consider waiting 2 months after retirement from coming back to the school district and working as a reemployed retiree. If not, they'll forfeit the first 2 months of their pension payments. The reemployed retiree will need to be enrolled and contributions will need to be remitted. Wait, let me go back. It's not on the slide, but retirees should consider waiting 2 months. There is an exception to that. If your employee is working 2 positions at the time of retirement, so they have established employment in 2 positions, they can retire from the higher paying position and continue working in the lower paying position without forfeiting the first 2 months of their pension payments. If they if they don't have 2 positions, but sometimes it's more financially beneficial for that individual to retire and then come back to work immediately as a reemployed retiree, and then they forfeit those first 2 months of pension payments. They won't receive those forfeited pension payments like at the back end once they retire. They won't receive those 2 months of missed pension payments. Once they're forfeited, they're not receiving it again. Employing disability benefit recipients. A SERS disability benefit recipient cannot be employed by a SERS covered employer. If a recipient is employed, the benefit ends. Schools that hire a disability benefit recipient must file notice of the employment, including the date of employment with SERS. A disability benefit recipient of another Ohio retirement system should contact the other system to determine if any restrictions on returning to other public employment. So let's say they are a new SERS member, but they're receiving a disability benefit from OPERS. It's up to the member to contact OPERS to see what the policy is. A member is not eligible for a SERS disability benefit if the person is receiving a disability benefit from another Ohio retirement system. So for multiple system coverage, an employee who has more than one job may contribute to more than one Ohio retirement system. For each covered job, the appropriate contribution should be sent to the proper retirement system. So for this example, I'm going to bring up one of the most common examples that we've noticed lately, but let's say you have your math teacher who is also, let's say, is an interim treasurer part-time for the school district. For the teaching contributions, those would be sent to STRS. For the interim treasurer contributions, those would be sent here to STRS, okay? So STRS covered membership includes teachers' aides, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, food service personnel, custodial or maintenance personnel, technology coordinators, treasurers, business managers, secretarial or clerical personnel, regular preschool teachers, including head teachers and aides for your regular preschool, special education preschool teachers, including aides but not head teachers, latchkey employees, early childhood instructors, ticket takers, security officers, and auxiliary services personnel in positions that do not require licensure under Ohio law. STRS covered membership, full-time and part-time teachers, preschool teachers, special education preschool head teachers, adult education instructors, substitute teachers, and tutors, County Board of Developmental Disabilities teachers, superintendents, psychologists, guidance counselors, auxiliary service personnel in positions that require licensure under Ohio law. So that's your SIRS STRS membership. When you are looking at SIRS covered membership, these are a few examples of questions you should be asking yourself. So for coaches, does the individual hold a valid teaching license? Your coaches, whether if they are teaching or not, but if they have a valid teaching license, their membership would go to STRS. They don't have to teach for your district. They don't have to be teaching in general. If they have a valid teaching license, their contributions automatically go to STRS. If their teaching license has expired or they don't have a teaching license, that's when they would come to SERS. For your nurses, does the individual have an Ohio Department of Education and Workforce school nurse license, or is the individual a registered nurse with a bachelor's degree? If you answer yes to this question, they go over to STRS. For your speech and language pathologists and audiologists, did your school receive an exemption from the ODE under section 3319.224 of the Ohio Revised Code? If yes, then the membership would go to STRS. Do I have any questions so far that I need to cover?
Just real quick, so there was a good example here talking about two positions. If a teacher is working during lunch as a cook, those positions, like the teaching contributions, will go to state teachers, and the cooking contributions will go to SIRS. And it goes the same way if you have a teacher who's a bus driver in the afternoon, you will still have to separate those contributions. There was another question about subs. It depends on what the sub position is. So if the person is a sub teacher, those sub contributions will go to STRS. If the person was a sub oh my gosh, what's the correct word? Paraprofessional, those will still go to SIRS. So I don't know if I answered the sub question right because it was just very generic, but if it was a substitute teacher, those earnings will go to state teachers. All right, and that's it. They had a couple questions about when to send contributions to state teachers versus SIRS. Oh, cool. Thanks. All right, Katie, you can continue now.
Okay. Okay. So because we have roughly 20 minutes left before the fire alarms go off, I'm going to cover compensation. The additional reporting and payment section, we will put in part 2, which is next Wednesday. So hopefully everyone in this training is signed up for next Wednesday. We won't be able to cover additional reporting and payment. And I don't want to rush through compensation because we had a lot of changes in July. So it's really important for me to it's important not to rush through a training period. So I just want to make sure that everyone gets all of the information needed. So if you're not signed up for next week, please sign up for next week. We will cover additional reporting and payments. Next week, we have it scheduled for an hour and a half next week. We will also be doing a quick eSIRS demo at the end of the training. So it'll kind of flow really well together. So without further ado, I'm going to what screen am I sharing? Yes, okay. I'm going to cover compensation. So what is covered compensation? Compensation is determined prior to the amount deducted as the employee's contributions and before any of the compensation is treated as deferred income for federal income tax purposes. Covered compensation includes all salary, wages, and other earnings paid to an employee by reason of employment. It is important to remit contributions promptly and accurately. Employee and survivor benefits are dependent on accurate compensation information. Contributions are to be remitted to SIRS no later than 5 business days after each pay date. Paragraphs B1, B2, and B3 of Rule 33 0102 define 3 separate types of compensation for SERS covered members. So paragraph B1 defines compensation as salary. It's defined as the base salary paid to an employee as set forth in the employee's contract, collective bargaining agreement, or employer salary schedule. Lump sum payments are not a part of base salary. They may only be considered a part of compensation if they are covered in paragraph D, which we will cover here in a moment. Paragraph B2 defines compensation as wages. Wages are defined as compensation paid to an employee for services based on time worked, but excluding overtime. Wages are payments to hourly workers for their normal schedules. Lump sum payments are not considered a part of wages. They may only be considered a part of compensation as provided in paragraph D. Earnings are defined as, or paragraph B3 defines compensation as earnings. Earnings are defined as payments by reason of employment other than salary and wages. These payments must be made in accordance with enforceable obligations negotiated in advance of the performance of the compensated service. So, for example, payments required by law or school district policy in accordance with a contract or collective bargaining agreement negotiated prior to the services being provided. So what we consider to be compensation subject to SERS contributions is your regular base salary, your regular base hourly wages, overtime paid to non-exempt employees, pickup on pickup plans, pay for used vacation and sick leave, paid holidays, calamity days, across the board retroactive wage settlements, longevity, length of service. If this is sent over to us, the payment will be based on total years of employment per written contract or policy and applicable to all employees. So we will need to see that contract or school district policy in order to approve the longevity as compensation. Any merit increase, employer payments paid to an eligible retirement plan such as a 403B, a 457B, or a 401k. Back pay awards that reinstate an employee to the employee's position without interruption or loss of time. The cost of back pay for fiscal years will include accrued interest. So in order to approve this as compensation, we will need to see a copy of the settlement agreement or grievance paperwork. And if the back pay is for previous fiscal years, the cost will also include accrued interest. We also consider extended days, compensation, commissions per contract terms, and payments made by the employer to the employee for workers' compensation salary continuation. We also consider lump sum payments as a part of compensation. However, it has to be provided for in the collective bargaining agreement, individual contract, or school district policy. We also consider retention payments considered compensation, but it has to be written into a contract. Education payments must be written into a contract or school district policy, and a signing bonus must be written into a contract or school district policy. Oh. So compensation not subject to SERS contributions. So for paragraph C, it reviews lump sum amounts and one-time payments that are not considered SERS compensation. So any unused compensatory time cash out or unused leave cash out. So any cash out provided for unused vacation, sick, or personal time, if it's unused time, that is not considered SERS compensation. Attendance incentives, so payments for limited use of sick leave per a policy or agreement. Wellness rewards, payments to employees for achieving measurable health goals as set forth in a written policy. Recruitment payments for referring a job applicant who is hired. And severance payments, these are not considered SERS compensation and cannot be reported. Any bonus payments, discretionary payments that are not governed in a contract. So if you are issuing a bonus payment, but it is not documented in the types of documentation that we require, we will not accept it and it cannot be reported to SDRS. Any amounts paid to an employee, including life insurance, sickness, accident, endowment, health, medical, hospital, dental, surgical coverage, or amount paid in lieu of providing insurance are not CSRS compensation. Incidental benefits, including lodging, food, laundry, clothing, uniform allowance, or parking. Services furnished by the employer, including the use of employer's property or equipment or cell phones, are not considered CSRS compensation. Reimbursement for job-related expenses authorized by the employer, including moving and travel expenses. Compensation made on behalf of an employee exceeding the allowable limit under federal tax law. These are not considered CSRS compensation. Anything of value paid to an employee based on or attributed to a retirement or an agreement to retire, and payments made as a differential payment for an employee who enters active military duty for more than 1 month cannot be reported to CSRS. We do not consider this to be CSRS compensation. Payments made to I just said that. Okay, so paragraph D. Lump sum payments and one-time payments considered compensation. So in order to be considered compensation in accordance with the definition, lump sum payments and one-time payments must be provided for in the collective bargaining agreement, individual contract, or school district policies in advance of the performance of the compensated service, including retention payments, signing bonuses, and education payments for certification. So if you are issuing a one-time lump sum payment, we will require the collective bargaining agreement, individual contract, or school district policy. If the lump sum payment is addressed in a document outside of these types of documents, more than likely we will not accept it as CSRS covered compensation. To be considered compensation, negotiated contract terms and formally adopted salary schedules must be in place before the payment is earned. When requesting a compensation determination, employer services will require all documentation regarding the payment in question. We will require the individual contract, collective bargaining agreement, school district policy, a salary schedule, grievances, or settlement agreements. We may request additional information, but we will need at least one of these documentations in regards to the additional payment being made. So a determination, if the compensation is determined to be a CSRS covered compensation and needs to be submitted for a previous fiscal year, certification of salary for non-contributing service form will need to be completed. The district will receive a compulsory service credit billing that includes both the employee, employer, plus interest contributions. The liability will be available in the payment remittance application on eCSRS. Once the cost has been calculated and submitted, you have until June 15th to make payment. If the determination is for the current fiscal year, the contributions will need to be entered into eCSRS as soon as possible. This will avoid a compulsory charge. Anyone in employer services can help the employer walk through this. Okay. We are going to add contribution reporting and payment to part 2 due to our fire drill. But because we have so much to cover. Okay, so Employer 101 Part 2 is next Wednesday at 9 a.m. The topics are going to be additional reporting and payment, additional reporting and processes, service credit purchase, employee benefits, and eCSRS tips. If you haven't signed up for next Wednesday, October 15th, you can do that on our employer page. If you do the employer whiteboard dropdown underneath employer education, we have training opportunities listed right here. You would just scroll down to our Employer 101 workshop. We are here You will need to sign up for Wednesday, October 15th. You will register and it'll be the same steps that you followed to register for today's training. Before I end this, are there any questions I should address before I end our Zoom?
Real quick, yes, I had a question that came in, a teacher holding a teacher's license. So with the coaching, so if a coach has a valid teaching license, yes, I will go over to state teachers. Technically, a ticket taker is a SIRS cover position. But if you have a teacher that you sent over ticket taking contributions to state teachers, we're not going to come after you for $5. Okay. But typically ticket takers are sent over to SIRS. So for depend supplemental coaches, okay, so that goes back to what I was saying before. Coaches are one of the special individuals. They will come down if they have a valid teaching license or not. So if your coach has a valid teaching license for Ohio, that will go to state teachers. If they do not hold a teaching license, they will be SIRS. If you go to Ohio Department of Education website, you can put the person's name in there and you can look up their teaching certificate to see if they have one. And if they held a oh my gosh, substitute teaching license, I believe, they will go over to state teachers too.
Yeah, so
That's
your
a
coaches
pretty
will either report to SIRS or STIRS.
thank
It
you.
just depends. A coach would always report to a pension system. It just depends on their licensing on where they would go.
Okay, cool. All right. I think that is it. Unless someone has a quick question here, you can turn your mic real quick and we can address it. If not, you can always hold the question. You can send the question to employer services at ohsers.org. And then next Wednesday, our floor will be open also for our next webinar.